I'm Layla from Washington, and I have a really personal story to share today. But before I do, please like and subscribe. My mom gave birth to identical twin daughters, me and my sister Elise. So, of course, my parents dressed us in the same clothes and braided our hair with matching ribbons. But people could easily tell us apart for one reason. Elise was born with a minor facial distortion. Her eyes were a little lopsided, and her mouth was almost as low as her chin. I, on the other hand, looked like a freaking porcelain doll. And everywhere we went, people would ooh and ah at me. She's just too lovely to be real.
Wow, look at those brown eyes.
I have the same color eyes.
But everyone ignored Elise, and it really got to her. I kept telling her she was just as pretty as me, but she wouldn't hear a word of it. And as years passed, my sister grew to hate me. Elise did everything she could to make me feel as sad and angry as she felt. She'd spread rumors about me at school, steal my diary, and once she'd tried to shave off my eyebrows. I was living in fear, 24/7. Worst of all, my parents didn't take it that seriously.
I'll take away her electronics for a week.
That's not enough, Dad. Elise is trying to ruin my life. What if she tries to seriously hurt me?
Oh, Layla, that's silly. Elise is just going through a phase and we would never let her harm you.
They didn't understand, and when I turned 14, things really turned upside down. One afternoon, I came home from school to find Elise in the living room with my parents, and they looked furious with me.
How could you do something like that, Layla?
What are you talking about?
Elise said you locked her in the closet for an hour. We heard her calling for us.
What? Just then, I saw Elise, and she was smirking at me.
I just don't think I feel safe around Layla anymore, Mommy. How can I trust her after what she did?
Guys, she's framing me. She locked herself up in the closet.
And why would she do that? That's just twisted, Layla.
Ugh, didn't my parents see how crazy Elise was? Not one of them talked to me that night. They all watched Luna Avatar with a bowl of popcorn while I stayed in my room. But the next morning, my parents did the unthinkable. They made me move into the guest house.
It was Elise's idea. You two need space away from each other. We can't have this negativity in the house.
So you're kicking me out? What, because I trapped her in the closet? I told you guys I didn't do it.
It doesn't matter who did it. The point is, you two are toxic for each other right now. And at the moment, Elise needs our attention more than you do. You have more friends and the world at your fingertips. It's just for a short time, Layla.
I was speechless. I was being punished for literally nothing, and it was all Elise's fault. I moved into our guest house that evening and didn't speak to any of my family members. In fact, I continued to ignore them for the next several months. Sure, it was clear Elise was much happier without me in the house. She made more friends and even picked up a few hobbies. But I was still bubbling with anger. One day, I was coming out of the supermarket when I saw a homeless boy outside with dyed turquoise hair. I immediately pulled out a bag of bananas and some change, but he just laughed.
Whoa, do I look like a beggar?
If I'm being honest,
These clothes are just really old.
I still insisted that he keep the bananas, and the two of us ended up having lunch together. I found out the boy's name was Easton, and he lived in an apartment down the block. He was also an absolute sweetheart. I told Easton all about my home situation and Elise's issues with me, and he had a brilliant idea.
Pretend to run away from home, leave at midnight, and leave a note. Turn off the location services on your phone, and you can stay at my place. They'll get so scared they'll beg you to move back in with them. They might even finally punish your jerk sister.
I was sold. My whole family deserved a little scare, so that night, I sent a text to both my parents to tell them my plans and switched my location to private. I spent the next 2 nights at Easton's apartment. His family was really poor, and I had to sleep on a torn cot, but I felt fantastic. My parents were probably going crazy.
Maybe they think you joined a gang.
Or they think I'm pregnant and ran off to get married. Unfortunately, the fun didn't last long. The next morning, my parents burst into Easton's apartment with several cops. They hugged me and cried for a moment, but then they were furious.
Why would you scare us like this? We had no idea what was going on.
Sorry, but you kicked me out for no reason, and then neglected me for 6 months. I needed to teach you a lesson.
Teach us a lesson? Layla, we know the living situation isn't perfect, and we know we haven't been giving you as much attention, but just disappearing like you did. That's crazy behavior. Come with us right this second.
After that, Mom let me move back into the house, but she watched me like a dog. Elise even suggested I shouldn't leave home without her escorting me, and my parents agreed. Luckily, I could still hang out with Easton, who was the only person who seemed to care about me, and it turned out we'd even be going to the same high school next month. On my first day of 9th grade, I was in gym class when Easton started jogging next to me.
Whoa there, you look ready to faint. Here, take some of my water.
Oh God, is it that obvious?
Don't worry, you still look lovely, even though you're drenched in sweat.
Easton smiled at me as I drank from his water, and I felt a little weak in the knees, and not just because I was tired. I saw Elise glare at me as she jogged by, but I didn't care. As months passed, Easton and I just got closer, and whenever Elise was mean, he always defended me.
You can make fun of Layla's dress all you want, but she's the one who got a party invitation, and you didn't.
Secretly, I had the biggest crush on Easton, but I was way too chicken to ever tell him. I was just grateful to have a best friend. It was exhausting living with a bully 24/7. Then, one day, when I came home from school, my parents gave me shocking news. They'd found a plastic surgeon to fix Elise's facial distortion. They couldn't completely get rid of it, but I'd never seen my sister so happy.
I felt so ugly my whole life, Layla. I know it sounds shallow, but I can't wait to be as beautiful as you.
Elise, look at me. You've never been ugly. But if getting this surgery makes you feel more confident, then I support you. Elise started to cry then and hugged me. I stayed with her in the surgery room the entire time, and she even apologized for how she treated me. And I was glad. I was ready to give up our crazy fighting. After Elise's surgery, things changed between us. Elise didn't seem jealous of me anymore, and even started hanging out with me and Easton. Then, one day, I walked into my front yard and almost had a heart attack. Elise was kissing Easton. Hey, does someone want to tell me what's going on here?
Well,
Layla, I've been meaning to tell you. Easton and I like each other, and I asked him out.
I felt like I was gonna throw up. I pulled Elise aside angrily. How could you do this to me? Elise, I love him and you know it.
I know you love him, and I'm sorry, but I've been hanging out with Easton for a couple of weeks, and we have a connection.
How could you do this to me? Elise, I love him and you know it.
Layla, I'm not trying to hurt you. I really like Easton, and I just want to be happy for once.
I can't take this anymore. You made me miserable for 14 years and then got me kicked out of my own house and convinced Mom to basically ground me for 24/7. This is the last straw. I stormed off and blocked Easton on all social media. He kept calling me to apologize and tell me that him dating Elise wouldn't change our friendship, but I refused to speak to him. The next day at school, I decided it was time for overdue revenge. The first thing I did was attach a bucket of paint to the cafeteria doorway, and when Elise walked in with Easton, pink splashed all over them. Everyone laughed like crazy, and I felt great. I got suspended for a day, but it was worth it, and I didn't stop there. That entire month, I pulled every prank I could think of on them at school, putting spiders in their locker and gluing their butts to the classroom chairs. I felt guilty for being a jerk, but Elise deserved it, didn't she? And Easton was dating my sister, who bullied me my whole life. Then one day, I was studying in the courtyard when Easton walked over to me, and he looked furious.
I've had it with you, Layla. Your jealousy has turned you insane. All the kids at school now are terrified of you.
What do you mean? I've done nothing to anyone, except you and Elise.
Really? Because the bucket of paint from your prank got all over the cafeteria floor, and one kid tripped and sprained his ankle. I'm sorry you're hurt about me dating Elise, but it happened organically. Our feelings for each other had nothing to do with you. I know you're hurt, but don't become a bully because of it.
Easton walked off, and I thought about what he said. Maybe Elise wasn't trying to hurt me, and her falling for Easton was just a coincidence. Maybe I could just be happy for her. So that week, I did everything I could to make things right with people. I volunteered to help as many kids as I could with homework, and they'd know I wasn't a monster. And I apologized to Elise and Easton, and surprisingly, they forgave me. On Friday night, Elise and Easton were celebrating their 1-month anniversary at the beach. So I told Elise I'd deliver them a picnic basket. But when I got there, Elise was sitting alone in the sand, and she was crying. Hey, what's wrong? Where's Easton?
He's not here, Layla. He's not coming.
Did you guys break up?
No, because we never dated. It was all fake. I even paid Easton monthly and used up all my savings. I wanted to make you jealous.
Wait, what? I don't understand.
I thought that after my surgery, people would start treating me differently because my face looked better. I thought I'd finally get as much attention as you. But because my distortion isn't totally fixed, I didn't. And that made me angry. But I can't do this to you anymore. I feel horrible.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Elise kept apologizing, but I couldn't even look at her. I didn't want revenge. I just didn't want to deal with her anymore. Things completely changed between us after that. My sister and I both cut contact with Easton and became strangers to each other. It broke my heart, but I didn't know what else to do. We were toxic for each other. Before we knew it, high school ended, and we both went our separate ways. A couple of years later, I was walking around my university campus when I got a phone call.
Layla, it's Easton. I know we haven't spoken in years, but I need your help. My parents lost their house and are homeless. I'm doing everything I can to help them, but I'm desperate. I'm calling everyone I know for either money or food.
My stomach was in knots. I still hated Easton for what he did, but he was obviously in a crisis. So I bought a bunch of food and clothes and arrived at the homeless shelter.
God, you're an angel. I can't thank you enough.
I'm not doing this for you. It's for your parents. And I never want to see you after this. Do you understand?
Yes, what I did to you was unforgivable. Can I just tell you one thing? I never wanted to go through with Elise's fake dating plan. The only reason I agreed to it was because my family's been struggling since I was a kid. I was always terrified we'd end up living on the streets. It's still no excuse, especially because I was in love with you.
My head started spinning. I had no idea Easton had been suffering that much, and I had no idea that he loved me. I decided it was time to smooth things over. That night, I went right home and convinced my parents to give Easton's family a loan, and then I asked if they could invite Elise for dinner.
Oh, sweetie, that's a wonderful idea. She's doing well these days, but she talks about you a lot.
For some reason, I was happy to hear that. When Elise came over, she immediately ran to hug me.
Layla, I'm so glad you're here. Actually, I got you some presents.
Elise handed me a huge gift bag, and to my shock, she bought me all kinds of expensive presents. Perfume, jewelry, and even a brand new iPad.
None of this makes up for how I've treated you over the years. But I love you, Layla. And if you ever want to have a relationship, I'm here.
Thanks, Elise. That means a lot. You did really hurt me. But it has been a couple of years. I can't forgive you overnight. But this is a good start.
I also know you got in touch with Easton. If you ever want to date him, you have my blessing. It's a possibility. But
first, I want to make things right with you. Though, of course, Elise invited Easton over later and left us alone on our porch.
I'm really glad you and Elise made up. Do you think you can ever forgive me? Layla, I never really got over you.
Wow, I didn't know that. But it will take me some time to trust you again.
I understand that. I'm willing to wait as long as it takes.